Good afternoon, all. Chris DeRosier with John Adams Mortgage and the affiliate director for the Grosse Pointe Board here again for Red Wine and Regulations, our affiliate update. Today we're going to have an excellent panel that's going to cross many sectors of our industry and provide us an update on the industry virtually and maybe some tips and tricks. And at the end, we'll have some questions. So right off the bat, we're going to welcome Mr. Rick Linnell with Linnell and Associates. Rick, how are you today? And take it away.
All is well. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. You know, you said tips or tricks. I don't know if I've got any tricks, but maybe some tips. You know, before we started recording, there was talk about the level of activity, and I can only judge it by the number of people that are hiring us. And I have to say, I have not been hired this much in a 60-day span since I started my career. And I suppose if we were talking about distressed properties, that might be a scary proposition. But of the amount of times I've been hired, the percentage of people who have distressed property situations, you know, falling behind with a bank, upside down as far as value versus debt, 1 or 2%. If anything, it's lower than what it would normally be. We'd normally be getting maybe 5%. So as far as the marketplace goes, it's extremely encouraging. In fact, the type of lawsuits that we're getting and things we're being called on are things that are indicative of people feeling confident about their real estate and believing in their real estate and the value that it represents. And it's really, I don't want to say it's surprising, but after what we've been through and what we're still going through to some extent, I guess it's assuring is the way I might say it. So, you know, as far as what we're seeing, COVID-19 effects, I'm not really seeing any current issues with landlord-tenant that's still on hold as far as being able to evict. And even if the governor doesn't extend, which to my knowledge, she did not do so today, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. But even without an extension, practically speaking, it's months before a landlord can get in court to evict a tenant, which is all the more reason to try to work something out with a tenant. But in certain instances, that's just not possible. But that's going to be a backlog that I think we're going to be dealing with for at least the balance of the year. It's exacerbated by the fact that the courts, the district courts, are now trying to schedule Zoom hearings with specific times. And for those of you who've been to landlord-tenant court, it's pro-tenant. And I don't necessarily think that's a negative. It's just a reality. And if a tenant misses a court time by Zoom, whether based on technology, a misscheduling, you know, a misunderstanding regarding scheduling, the benefit is going to inure to the tenant. So landlords are going to continue to struggle with tenants, at least tenants that are not paying timely. As far as the aid that's being offered, I don't know anyone that's received any aid. I know there's a process for application. I'd be concerned, and this isn't about the state, but just the amount of money, the $50 million, as far as how far it will go. I know there are some conditions preceding to accepting that money, which may make sense. But right now, landlords are struggling. Regarding other things I'm seeing a lot of issues regarding enforcement of contracts. And this might be related to COVID-19, although I'm not entirely sure. I'm seeing a big uptick in the number of sellers that are refusing to consummate purchase agreements. Surprisingly so. I would think if you're a seller and you've gotten a good offer, there might be a little concern as to what happens going forward. But based on the amount of cases I'm getting, that doesn't seem to be the situation. And there have been some sellers that say, well, I'm concerned about COVID-19 and how things are going to be in the future, et cetera. What I think is important to note is if you're a buyer or you're a selling agent or even a listing agent, the contracts are enforceable. Now, this is not new news, but it's certainly been an uptick. And I do get lots of questions from realtors and brokers about this. And that is, will the court actually make the seller sell? And it's often said, you know, the little old lady, are they really going to make her sell, Rick? And the answer is yes. Unequivocally, yes. sellers still have to sell. Despite the concerns of COVID-19, which are valid concerns, they in no way eliminate the obligation of a seller to sell, and the courts will make it happen. Related to the same situation is, if a seller refuses to sell, will a listing agent still be able to enforce their listing agreement? And the answer is absolutely yes. If the seller doesn't want to sell, the listing agent can't make them sell, but the listing agent is entitled to their commission. If a ready, willing, and able buyer has been procured, they're entitled to their commission. If you represent a buyer and a buyer defaults on a purchase agreement and doesn't avail themselves of a contingency, that buyer is liable for that commission to their buyer agent. And obviously I'm a lawyer, so part of what I do is go to court, and I enjoy it. But I'm not here to stir the pot. But I point these things out because oftentimes the agents are left sort of holding the bag, if you will, when these transactions break apart. The buyer doesn't always want to go forward with forcing the seller to sell, either because they don't want to put the energy towards it. They would rather go look for a new house. They don't want to spend the money. They don't like the idea that there's a bit of uncertainty as to how long it will take to force the seller to sell. And so there's no effort to force the contract, or specifically to force the seller to sell. But that does not leave the agents without remedies, I should say. They have rights, and as far as I'm concerned, they're entitled to the commissions. In fact, we take those cases on a contingency basis, meaning we get paid if we win and collect. So I just point out that we're seeing a lot of that. We're also seeing a lot more boundary disputes and issues regarding enforcement of deed restrictions, like, for instance, master deed bylaws or covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Now, this is just a theory, an unproven theory, I'll admit, but it's a theory of mine that possibly because people are at home so much more, they're starting to really focus on things, like the neighbor's fence they think is on their property, or the neighbor's shed they think is on their property, or a tree that's growing over on their property. And not that they just discovered it, but they kind of knew about it or kind of thought about it, but it just really wasn't top of mind. And maybe with people working from home, which is my only theory, we're seeing more and more of this. And one thing I would point out is that in these boundary dispute cases, people are oftentimes familiar with adverse possession, which is a way to obtain title to another's land without any formal agreement to do so by court action. But what's not as well known is acquiescence. And acquiescence is where two abutting property owners recognize the property line as being somewhere other than where it is, oftentimes with a fence not put on the common property line. And the reason I bring up acquiescence is that is the much more common theory by which another person can gain some of your land. And the threshold to establishing an acquiescence claim is significantly less and lower than adverse possession. What advice would I give to a homeowner? Really, it's nothing new, and that is get a survey before you buy. Put a survey contingency in. I know that people will say, Rick, that's easy to say, but that costs money, that takes 30 days, and that's going to make the offer less attractive. I can't refute that. But the reality is that if a buyer buys and there is a potential acquiescence claim and 15 years has passed, which is the amount of time that has to pass, the buyer is effectively buying that problem and stuck with that problem. So the balance becomes, do you want to know about a situation or a potential situation before you buy? Or do you want to find out after you buy when maybe it's too late to do anything other than to accept the reality of the situation? I would say those are really the main things. I don't want to go over my 5 minutes. I wasn't paying attention to the timing, but I would say those are the things that I'm seeing most frequently. I see other issues related to lakefront use, but I kind of consider that an extension of boundary issues. And I think it has to do with the time of year and maybe also with people being more at home. But oftentimes it's associated with warm weather because that's when people are using the lakes, whether they're lakefront with riparian rights or they're off lake with some form of usage in a community area. So I see more and more cases related to that.
Perfect. Great stuff. So if anybody has any questions for Rick, feel free to write them down, put them up in the comments. We'll try to circle back and get all of the questions at the end. Next, we're going to welcome in another first-timer on our panel, Ron Bommarto with Weatherstone. Ron, how are you today? And take it away.
Thank you very much. Yeah, doing great. It is kind of fun working out of the house because you get a chance to get some other things done at the same time. I don't have quite the extensive report that Rick had because our world is a little more constant. Except in this current period, we have been breaking records literally every week since the realtors were cut loose. And so it causes problems because there's a 5, 7, 10-day time period on the PA, and we want to make sure that we get that covered within that period of time without having to go into an extension. And so that's probably been one of the greater issues. It's a nice problem to have that we have so much business, but at the same time, keeping up with it is utmost. We are encouraging our realtors to put 7 to 10 days on the purchase agreement to allow for that additional amount of time it's going to take to get out there. Meanwhile, what I've done is I brought Matt in here. He's got a greater handle on the sort of the day-to-day, and he has some trend comments that he'd like to make. And so I thought I'd pass that on to him, allow him to sort of fill in some of the blanks that you may have. If that's okay.
Matt, you got to unmute yourself. Lower left-hand corner. There you go.
Oh, I just unmuted myself. I didn't know if I was going to be speaking in here or not. I thought I would jump in because I've got a little bit more experience than Ron just in terms of what's going on in the market and a beat on things in terms of inspections, home inspections. It's been, I guess craziness would be the best word to talk about this. As soon as the governor lifted inspectors from being and included us in the essential services, it got really crazy quickly. We brought on our staff, and but what I expected was a surge, and kind of like I think what Rick was talking about, the surge has just continued to be like a tidal wave. And this week was the first week where we've seen just a little bit of a plateau, but been very busy. Issues that we're having in terms of the dynamics of the home inspections would be just what Ron talked about, that we're trying to ask our realtors to ask for 7 to 10 days. We do a lot of home well septic, and what we're seeing is that there's so much activity that people are negotiating in shorter terms. They're bypassing home inspections, and it's making it really difficult. We're getting crazy requests, trying to squeeze things in. Been a little maddening. I actually gave the whole team off the entire 3 days for the 4th weekend because we were starting to get just a little bit stressed because there was so much going on. I think you're all probably seeing something similar to that. So that was our encouragement was, hey, if you can ask for the 7 to 10 days, because the SPEAR that includes, like, getting lab work back, or like Macomb County well and septic, we do a lot of those, where they put out a notice saying, hey, we'll be able to handle those quickly. They've been inundated, and we're like waiting 2 weeks, and we have a time frame on some of those inspections that if we don't get in, it's no longer valid. And so we're trying to really hustle and do creative things to get within our time frames, make special arrangements for some of our customers. So that's one of the things that we're seeing. We are seeing a lot of, as Rick alluded to, the nervousness of our buyers because they're going in there and they say, hey, look, I overbid for the property. Can you look extra carefully at this home inspection and give us some tools to negotiate, which is normally not something that we would do. We're like, hey, this is what you've got between you and your realtor. But again, it's just making it very interesting, the conversations that we're having, that type of thing. What else can we talk about? So the 7 to 10 days we realized would be ideal, but I kind of wanted to hear some of the thoughts from the realtor perspective on that, because we know that you're negotiating sometimes shorter periods. And so we're it's putting us in that difficult spot. But I was going to say I mentioned even our lab work. You know, if we're doing home well septic and we're sending out lab work, DEQ, for instance, state of Michigan, short-staffed, cutting back their hours. They're sometimes 2 weeks out. We're having to creatively sometimes redo lab work to get water test results to get in with our inspection time frame to get the results so they can get the deals done. So that kind of craziness, we're doing what we can on there. One of the things in terms of some of the trends that we have seen at Weatherstone is high-end homes. Amazing number of homes between like the 500 and 1.2 million. We've had even some more than that, just a lot of higher end homes. Maybe people who have not been as impacted economically during the COVID-19 and have just been kind of on hold waiting for the opportunities. A lot of that type of stuff, which of course those homes for us require often 2 inspectors or more. And again, really putting a crimp on our scheduling. But I kind of wanted to throw out that, field a few questions. But we are seeing just a little bit of a stabilizing in terms of just the number of phone calls and activity this week, although this historically, the weekend after the 4th is a little bit slower, but we've been kind of in a very unhistoric time period. So that's pretty much what we've got at Weatherstone.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Jaymie. Paternoster, we're gonna come over to you next. How are you today? And take it away.
Hey there, I am fantastic. Yeah, I look awesome. I love Zoom. You see yourself and you're like, oh man, everyone can see me. I think I was so smelly from the day in houses that I had to make sure I showered before you could smell me through the monitor. Anyway, actually, it's pretty similar on our end from what Mr. Ron and Matt were talking about. Because you guys are just out there pounding the pavement, we had to figure out how to be a little more creative with our calendar. So yeah, I think inspection wide, if you want and we always recommend this, if you talk your client into getting a quality home inspection, that home inspection company is going to be booked out a few days. So that's something to consider. You know, you can always go onto Google and find somebody else that's available tomorrow. But if you haven't heard of them before, you and your client really want to think twice about going with someone that you haven't heard of before. We actually had to add, not had to, we've been looking for years, but just Matt, you know, it's difficult to find a really good home inspector. So yeah. We just hired one more and we cut him loose on Tuesday. So that helps with our, like our lead time, you know. But home inspection wide, I think that's the biggest thing. Just when you're putting in those offers, I understand that it's super competitive right now. And I understand that that's one of the ways that you get it is when you have a small, you know, inspection period, like window. I completely respect that. I want your clients to get the house that they want, but I also want them to get a quality inspection. So yeah, that's pretty widespread. That was good, Matt. Do any of you have questions for home inspectors in general right now? Through COVID, you know, we had so many things change, and right now I think it's still just, you know, wearing a mask and sanitizing when a house is occupied, keeping our distance from our clients and our agents while also trying to educate them thoroughly. I think that we're all pretty much in the same boat when our clients attend, because of course all of us, we always encourage clients to attend because that's the whole reason they're having one, right? But what kind of questions do you guys have for us as home inspectors?
Everybody, until somebody asks a question, everybody's silent. So I'll start, even though I don't practice anymore. 7 to 10 days. Is that Ron? And I'll ask both Jaymie and Ron. Is that putting the pressure on you that makes it difficult to meet that window? Because from a realtor's perspective, they should not be having the inspection on the 7th or 10th day. They should be having it on the 4th or the 7th, because there's always stuff. And getting a phone call and, oh, we had the house inspection yesterday and they've really got some issues and we'd like to get somebody else back out there, and 10 days ran out last night. You know, and you've got it was a multiple offer situation. You got two people that are interested in doing it and waiving the inspection. What are you going to tell the guy?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is 7 to 10 days even practical?
Well, I think that's a good question to just ask as you're shopping around for the inspector. Like, a lot of times we'll get a call just when they're putting an offer in, or you know, when a buyer likes a house and they're putting an offer in, they're at least just calling to say, okay, how far are you booked out? So we know what to put down as a time frame, and that's fair. We're not scheduling it because, you know, we've all learned in the past that we've had too many cancellations when someone doesn't get their, you know, doesn't get the house. But to at least ask, you know, how far are you booked out, so they, while they're filling out the paperwork, they know. And then the other thing is, as soon as you get that yes, call and schedule your inspection right away. Don't wait for, you know, day 4 to go by and then finally call to schedule. We're only booked out like 48 hours right now. We try and stay pretty consistent with that, which is why we grow our team. And then also, when you guys are shopping around for inspectors, ask when the report is available. That's another big thing, because even though you were at the inspection and you got the information, what are you going to hand over for your inspection response? Like, are you physically going to have a report that day? So that's always a good question to ask your inspector too. How long you have to wait after it finally happens to get that?
Ron, anything you want to add?
Well, certainly it is a juxtaposition. I mean, you realtors don't want to put a longer waiting period on there. You don't want to waive the inspection. And yet there's a seller wants to, you know, get the answer right away and move the deal along. It's unresolvable when there are virtually more people needing inspections than there are good inspectors available. And just as Jaymie pointed out, you can always find an inspector because anybody can put their name on a card and call themselves an inspector tomorrow. So I think we're reaching that point, as Matt pointed out, of the plateau. I think that just that pent up demand has finally reached that point where now we can book on a little more stable basis and get those inspections in. But clearly, Bob, you're right. It's not an easy answer because we want to do the inspection, and in fact, we're doing sometimes evening inspections too, which typically has not been the case. But as Matt pointed out, it just causes burnout too. So there's we think we're past this mad rush, and it should stabilize a little bit more as we go forward.
Yeah.
Past might be a little overstatement on that, but we're booking out about 5 to 7 days. And one of the, Bob brought up a really good point on there, and that is like what's happening to us is we'll have it all scheduled, and we'll have a cancellation that morning saying, oh, we found somebody who could do it a couple of days ago, because we're booked out 5 to 7 days is where we're booking at. That's been a little frustrating, but like the timetable on getting reports out, we've got guys staying up to 1 o'clock because it's their last day. And if we will ask that question because we recognize how important it is to get into your time frame. And so we'll do the best we can to get those things done. And again, it's all part of the craziness that's been going on, and it's been we've been pushing really hard to keep up with it. And I know that all the inspection companies are struggling with the same thing. But to answer directly to Bob's question he asked about I think the 7 to 10 days is still a great number because of all the unexpected things that are going on and dynamics that we haven't foreseen. You know, we're having all these strange issues come up, and that's been very frustrating.
Well, thank you very much for all of the insight there. And we're going to keep this moving along. Kevin Jenkins, Noel Selewski. We're going to call on you next for an update from the insurance side. If you take yourself off mute.
Even he may have stepped away.
All right. Well, we can't always ensure a smooth transition here. There we go.
He's off mute.
Kevin, sorry, Chris.
Sorry about that. That was an accident. Sorry, I knocked my phone down. Well, we're the insurance side of things, and obviously with as hot as the market is, we're in demand as much as anything because, we're integral to being able to close the mortgage. Right now, the big thing is have an informed buyer and let them be knowledgeable about the home. The problem that we've run into recently is people have run out to buy, and they're not sure that the year built or the updates, the mechanicals, things of that sort. So with those things, if I have that information, and any insurance agent really should be able to do that. If we have the correct information, we're able to turn quotes around. If we get a call in the morning, we should have it in the afternoon. Even with as busy as the industry is right now. But what we're finding is that you're getting buyers that are jumping on a home because they didn't have they've missed out on the 3 before, and they're not checking what it's going to cost if it'll mess up a debt to income ratio for a mortgage closer. So those items are important. And obviously, in the insurance industry right now, the big hot question switches over to auto. But I'd like to, keep things regarding what it takes to help, the Grosse Pointe Board of Realtors members get their deals closed as fast as possible. That includes the mortgage representatives as well as the realtors themselves.
Good. Thank you. Obviously, we could go on and on and on for hours, I'm sure, on the auto reform, which is a whole separate topic. So,
Kevin, can I ask a housing insurance question?
Of course, sir. I'm always open for questions.
So one of the misnomers out there is that a buyer only needs to get homeowners insurance for the amount of the mortgage. So if I buy a house for $200,000 and I'm financing 160, I only need to have mortgage protection for 160. I only need to have homeowners insurance for 160,000. And there isn't a lender out there that'll accept that from a insurance company's perspective. Does that even make sense?
You can purchase what's called an actual cash value policy or a market value, basically what you owe on it. Is it the best coverage? No, not necessarily. But what we found after the housing crash is the mortgage companies started coming in with different requirements. And I'm not talking the mortgage representatives themselves. This was after the reforms that went through Congress. You did find loans that were requesting replacement cost policy. In technicality, and this is a question that probably can piggyback with any one of the mortgage representatives in here. In technicality, the loan is going to say you're going to have stipulations, and with those stipulations, they will say must be replacement costs for the loan, or cover the maximum insurable value. And then there are some that still have the stipulation must cover mortgage interest, which would be whatever the balance of your mortgage is. I always do caution a buyer when they purchase something of that manner, realize that it pays off the balance of your mortgage and leaves you, without funds for a new down payment if you're not repairing your home.
I'll back that up. Yes, we will on every mortgage need replacement cost because the collateral is the home, and we need to make sure that the collateral is there or will at least be rebuilt. So, well, thank you very much, Kevin. Next up, we're going to go to Jason Kaleta with Hill Mortgage he'll start us off with our mortgage update. So, Jason, take it away.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for joining. I guess kind of piggyback on Matt earlier as far as the turn times. About my end of it is we have what's called a non-QM lender, which are loans that are Fannie Mae, Freddie. They're not back. They were completely out of the business 60 days ago. Now we're seeing some more of them come in. So kind of what you guys were saying, starting to stabilize and get back to where we're back to normal underwriting times. Lenders are removing some more of the overlays, some of the things that they put in place with I don't know, panic's the right word, or whatever the case is, that we had over the past minutes. We're starting to see some loosening up of those and getting back to a little bit more of the way it was, at the beginning of the year and previous year. So, which is a good sign. We are, I'm sure Chris and the other lenders on here will let you know that it's moving. Seems like everything's moving back to the way it is. There clearly was a scare. It has been pretty busy. We were talking before the call. It's been pretty busy, which is a great thing for all of us. It sounds like everybody on this, it's been busy, which is really, really encouraging. And I think we're starting to get back to a little bit more of the way we're used to it being, as far as the guidelines and less overlays on the lending side, less underwriting conditions, and moving forward to getting us to the closing table, all parties involved at the closing table, in a timely fashion. That's about it that I have, guys. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me or whatever the case, but that's about it.
I was curious about that black Stetson over there on
yeah,
your right.
You inspired me, Bob. I bought this. This is my selling hat. This is it helps keep my I got boots. Now they're not here. I bought some boots too. So, I was curious about your grandson. He's been sitting there since Tuesday morning when we were on our other call. Is that your grandson behind you?
That is my grandson. Yeah,
he's a well-trained kid. He hasn't moved in 2 days.
He hasn't moved since. I got my gray on, by the way.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, yours looks a little more expensive. Mine was $25 on some kind of. It's plastic.
Yeah, I from a mortgage perspective, I referenced him in my video. If you haven't seen it this week, they're moving. They have closed on their house in Austin, Texas. They have purchased and are closing on their house in Wisconsin. Everything took place in no time, and they bought in Wisconsin without leaving Texas. And you'd say, okay, that's kind of what we expect for 2020. The long answer to that, or the rest of the story, is that they bought the house in Texas sight unseen as well 4 years ago. So this is not a unique one-off as far as the industry is concerned. This is more likely a long-term trend, and I continue to encourage people. I have those of you who are in the mortgage business, are you encountering, what kind of frequency are you encountering with people who haven't physically been in the house?
I have one closing tomorrow, buying a second home in up here in St. Clair Shores, East Point, and they've never seen the home. So I don't know if that's it's a second home. They're using it as a second home, but they have never physically been in the property. So, I don't know if that's frequent, but I have one going on.
I've had 4 so far this year that people have mortgaged and purchased a home that they just never stepped in.
So let's go back to Rick for a minute. What level of responsibility does that raise? What amount of responsibility does that create for the buyer's agent? And does it elevate the responsibilities of the home inspector that are looking at these houses? I mean, it seems to me that all of this could easily come into play if it becomes more and more common. Rick, you're muted.
Back. Certainly from a litigation standpoint, I think it's more likely that a dissatisfied purchaser might blame their agent and or inspector. But as far as actual liability, unless there's some culpability on the part of, for instance, the agent and the inspector in cahoots, which of course doesn't happen, or the agent making some representation about something, for instance, the dining room is 15 feet wide when it's 12 feet wide. But as far as it looks nice, I think it's in good condition. It's got nice curb appeal. Those kinds of sort of statements that I think are oftentimes made by agents in discussions, they're not actionable. And so, yes, you could see more claims, but as far as merit to the claims, I don't see it at all.
Interesting.
It would make me nervous. I mean, as an inspector, I don't know if it would really make me nervous because I'm doing my job the way I do it. the fact that someone else isn't here to watch me inspect, they still get my report, they still get my pictures. I don't know if that really lends itself as much as the agent. As a buyer's agent, I would feel more pressure because I'd feel like they're relying more on my subjective view of the property. But that doesn't, in my mind, that does not raise any more likelihood of a valid liability claim against that buyer agent.
Thank you.
Sure.
Perfect. Good. And to just kind of wrap up the mortgage section here, a couple of things. As we are all busy, it is important to make sure that from an agent perspective, you're getting your clients pre-approved or re-approved as early in the process as possible. We're seeing a lot of coming to us as lenders with purchase agreements, and they've put their mortgage in forbearance. Their income dropped over the last couple of months and their year-to-date is off, or something that's just going to stand in our way. The student loans have gone into forbearance, and that creates an issue, and they no longer qualify even if they had a pre-approval prior. So making sure that they step in and they get that reapproval or that pre-approval as early as possible to make sure that everybody's aware of where we stand properly. And then hot off the presses today, the Freddie Mac primary mortgage market survey, the lowest rate ever at 3.03%. Your grandma won't even give you a loan for that low. So by all means, for those who have somebody who is on the fence about waiting, if they can find a home that checks all of their boxes now, why would they wait? Rates are as low as they've ever been. It's a great time. And for those who are thinking about selling their home, they need to keep in mind that rates are as low as they've ever been. And for every 0.5% that interest rates increase, a buyer loses roughly 5% of their purchase power. So that will shrink the pool of buyers for them as well. So from a mortgage perspective, if there's any questions, put them in the chat. We'll circle up to those later. Next, we're going to come over to Peter Chirco from Chirco Title to give us a little update on the title industry.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So title is not having a total amount of changes lately. We've been kind of going steady for the past little bit here. You see, I think everyone title-wise is back to open, back to doing closings in their offices, in your offices, things like that, which wasn't the case a month or so ago. There was a lot of us that weren't doing that, but everyone around should be doing those now with taking proper precautions. Talk to your title agents. Let them know what your office is doing so that they know as far as cleaning procedures, rules and regulations on who can come in, how many people in a room. Those are all important things for your title agent to know when scheduling closing so that we're aware and we can make sure that things get done properly for you. And as everyone's been saying, title has been buried lately. It's been crazy. All the other title agents that I've talked to have echoed the same thing, that it's been crazy out there, lots and lots and lots of orders. So things are taking a little bit more time to get out, but obviously, we're doing our best to get them out there as fast as possible for everyone, get these things closed. I know a lot of people are unsure what's going to happen, if we're going to stay open, if we're going to slide back, which industries are going to slide back with the governor. And so I know people are trying to get things closed. The buyers and sellers want to get these transactions done before anything does happen. So, actively working to get everything done for everyone. But yeah, like I said, not a whole lot changing in our industry right now. We're kind of status quo moving forward.
Good. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll kind of open up to any questions. I do also want to point out that Don Precor from Fifth Third is here representing the mortgage industry as well. So if there are any questions, feel free, we can direct those at Don as well. But At this time, if anybody has any questions at all, feel free to unmute yourself and fire questions away. And while we're waiting for that to happen, I'm going to officially say hello to George McMullen. I don't think I've ever been happier. Not that I don't like all of you. I don't think I've ever been happier to see an individual in a Zoom meeting.
Chris, you mind if I say a couple of things?
Go for it, sir.
I've been pretty public right now. In fact, I was in chemo today. I've been fighting pancreatic cancer for about 4 months. Before I was diagnosed, though, we did join the Grosse Pointe Board of Realtors as a city member of Grosse Pointe Woods. I will have to admit that I've been more fighting my disease. I'm now back on city. I resigned from city council. I've been appointed to city council because my outlook looks very, very good. And I'm going to, again, resurrect in how we can in how we can increase our partnership with the Grosse Pointe Board of Realtors. I think we're one of the few cities in the state, maybe in the country, that is a member as a city. So I'll be working on that very hard with Amy and Bob and then Bruce Smith, our city manager, and see how we can get the relationship going. So thank you. And for all those who've been praying for me, it definitely has made a difference. Thank you.
Congrats, George. Good job, man.
Yeah, it is. It's good to see it. George, I unmuted myself because I want the industries that are represented here, the lenders, the attorneys, the attorney, home inspectors, et cetera, to think about how your job is easier when you're working with a municipality than what it might be currently. And I don't know that perhaps some of you never have the issue. Perhaps it's a non-issue. Homeowners insurance, another area. But I'm just curious to know if there's anything that we need to be aware of so that we can work with George. This relationship with Grosse Pointe Woods is one that we're trying to put together and take it on the road, so to speak, and see if there's a better way for the real estate industry, the realtors, to be engaged with those entities that we all come in contact with over the course of a real estate transaction.
Yeah, I think it is a membership that we value, that is going to separate this association from others. The fact that we don't just say that we care about the markets that we serve and the communities we serve, we're actually engaging with. So, George, we're happy to have you back. Suzanne, I saw your hand go up earlier. You had a question, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I just had a closing delayed, being informed that MISHTA is 8 days out. So I don't know if anyone's had issues or heard of anything, or am I just getting, a big fat lie because maybe the buyer didn't do something, but we had to delay our closing for 2 weeks.
I can tell you, it looks like I'm looking at the camera, but I am actually looking at the MISHTA site. And currently, they are reviewing files that were submitted on June 30th.
Yeah, so they didn't lie.
Nope, they are like everybody. And one thing that we've been seeing today as we're scheduling appraisals is appraisers are backed up. There is a massive amount of volume that has been thrown into this pool that we're all swimming in, and it's causing delays for all of us. So as long as we all work together, and I think we can get through this.
To give you an idea what that bump up is, June sales for this year are 24% ahead of June sales for last year across Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and St. Clair counties. That's unheard of. 24%.
It's encouraging.
So you as lenders, because I always call and ask for a number of days to put for closing for my offer, is this something you're taking into consideration? Will you guys know if the appraisers are that backed up, or what's the insight?
Yeah, we get it once we order it. Well, at least on my end, we get an email that the appraisal's been ordered, or that's been ordered, when it's been accepted by the appraiser, and when they can go back out there. Typically, they'll go through and try to get somebody to do it the earliest, as soon as possible. But it has been a little delayed, not too much, I guess, a couple of days, but
Okay, nothing
still
that we
within time frame. From what I've seen, anyways.
And as long as we're not getting crazy with the close times, even a 2-week appraisal from order to report being delivered fits within that normal time frame. So
Okay.
as long as the lender's not waiting until the file's approved or gone through underwriting, which there's no reason to, as long as they're ordering that in a normal course of a transaction, even an extended appraisal time still fits. So I know there are some lenders out there, wholesale and retail, that are trying to push for the 15 to 20 day close, and in the market that we're in right now, that there's too much volume for everybody to do their job correctly and have that. If we're all rushing, I think that's where it comes to errors. So
for those of you, as we close out, Allison, of course, put in the chat box, just great thanks to our presenters, great information. I'm going to reference some of this in our video next week, but I also want to let you know that unless you have been counting, there have been a total of 20 different people here today. Now, we started out a little light, but we ended up doing pretty good. We've got 17 in right now, but we've had 20 different people come in and visit with us during this hour. So thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it.
are there any other questions out there? Well, perfect.
Oh.
Well, again, for all of those who have joined us today, thank you very much. We're going to continue with our virtual happy hours here through Red Wine and Regulation, so that we have open communication between our members and our affiliates, and provide you guys as much value as we possibly can. So again, I want to thank Rick Linnell, Don Precor, Jason Kaleta, Jaymie Paternoster, Matt, Ron, Peter. I'm not going around the room making sure I'm not forgetting anybody. So I want to thank everybody for taking time to come out today, and everybody stay cool. It's a little warm out there. And Jason, don't cut that hair.
Man, it's getting rough.